Hello and welcome to this virtual session. We're glad you can join us today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we'd like to go over with you now. Firstly, you can resize the webinar windows to cater to your viewing preferences. You can maximize, minimize and drag the windows to your preferred viewing size. If you look at the bottom middle of your screen, you can click on the widgets that you'll need to get the most out of this virtual experience. Secondly, Microsoft specialists are on hand to answer your questions in real time. So feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, we've provided some additional resources for you to supplement your learning. You can access them by clicking on the links in this section. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our speakers.
Welcome back to part 2 of this Microsoft 365 Virtual Training Day. Enable hybrid work with Microsoft Teams. In this part of the event, we start with Module 4, Manage Meetings and Virtual Events in Microsoft Teams. We wrap up the event with Module 5, Manage Calling in Microsoft Teams. In Module 4, we'll explore meetings, webinars, and virtual events, and conclude with a look at some of the many Teams devices. Let's get started with Module 4. And now manage meetings and virtual events in Microsoft Teams. Starting with experiences. The new experience is Teams webinars, where we can have custom attendee registration. It ties in nicely with Dynamics 365 marketing. We've had Teams meetings for years, one-to-one, group meetings, enabling chats, sharing, and collaboration, and Teams live events. Useful use case there, company town halls, up to 20,000 people. Typically, you're going to have multiple people involved in the event, not just the presenter, but the producer role as well. Maybe you're using some third-party hardware or software to help with production. So qualitatively different, each of these, meetings, webinars, and live events. Meetings have a maximum of 1,000 people. We can have breakout rooms in meetings, chat, video, we can share, we can enable apps for meetings, and they can be channel meetings, private meetings. Here's what a webinar looks like. So again, a custom attendee registration page is available. We can have branding, logos, backgrounds, and email confirmations. We can even restrict attendance based on answers to some pre-webinar questions. And roles. So we have an organizer role, someone that sets up the virtual event in the first place. A producer, someone has to switch between feeds. Let's say we have multiple presenters around the world. Someone has to designate the live feed at any given time. And then we have one or more presenters and, of course, attendees. We're not required to use any third-party hardware or software, but we could. For example, some third-party providers, some content delivery network options there. So the idea is we want to get a quality feed to as many people as possible, up to 20,000, even from disparate locations around the world. So the idea with content delivery network providers, we want to get the video feed as close as possible to large groups of users so that they have minimum round-trip latency and the best experience viewing the virtual event. We can use Azure Media Services to help with production, and either Azure's content delivery network or a third-party enterprise content delivery network provider. There are various meeting settings we can use. Do we want to allow for anonymous users to access, or do we want to use email invitations, and then we can customize those invitations as well? We can configure these settings from the Teams Admin Center. We can have special URLs for our logo, our legal disclaimer. Very helpful to have a help URL. Users can click a link and get help if they have trouble joining the virtual event, for example, and a footer. Also, we can preview the invite. Super helpful. We may think we've got everything just so, and then we might notice in the preview that, oh, we made a typo. So it's good to correct that before it goes out to everyone else. We can also specify port ranges. We looked at port ranges earlier. So the default port ranges for audio, 50,000 to 50,019. Video, 50,020 to 50,039. And screen sharing, default ports, 50,040 to 50,059. There are many meeting policies we can create and manage as well. Do we want to have Meet Now in channels? So I can make an argument either way. Do you want people focused on the meeting content or be able to have side conversations? Do you want to allow an Outlook add-in? This is helpful because that way you can schedule meetings right from within Outlook. You can allow for scheduling of private meetings. For audio and video, you can choose whether or not to allow for IP video, and if so, a media bit rate in kilobits per second. For recording and transcription, do you want to allow transcription? Do you want to allow recording to the cloud? And the default is off for the ability to store recordings outside your country or region. You may want to enable that. For content sharing, the screen sharing mode, is it the entire screen? Is it an application? Can any participant request control or give control? Does this apply to external participants as well? Do you want to allow for PowerPoint sharing, whiteboards? For participants and guests, can anonymous people start a meeting? And who has presenter rights in meetings? Could be everyone, for example. That could get chaotic. Do you want to automatically admit people? If so, just people in your organization or guests too? Or do you want them to wait in the lobby and then someone has to manually let those people in? And then what about for people phoning in, those dial-in users? Should they get to bypass the lobby, yes or no? You could enable live captions. And again, you could allow chat in meetings. The meeting policies could apply to organizer, and then all the participants would inherit the policy assigned to the organizer. Or we could have policies assigned per user, or both, per user and per organizer. A lot of flexibility there. For audio conferencing, do you want to enable users to phone in? Not everyone can be in front of their computer or tablet, say, for a meeting. Maybe they're on the road, and they can dial in, but they're unable to look at a screen. So in this case, where do they call? Do they all call the US from anywhere in the world, or do you have some numbers that are local to where your users are? If you have enough users in a given area, it makes sense to have a local number to call, even a toll-free option. You have choices there. And then you have choices with language settings for the prompts and conference bridge settings as well. Do you require a PIN to join the meeting? For audio conference, you can set up bridges, again, toll or toll-free. If needed be, you can change the default conference bridge number, and you can assign dial-in phone numbers for users as well. For the bridge settings, do you want meeting entry and exit notifications? Again, if it's a large meeting, I would say no, because do you really want to hear the name or phone number of everyone joining the meeting? Probably not. If it's a small meeting, maybe that's okay. If so, do you want users to record their name before joining a meeting? For live events, you can configure a support URL, optionally use a third-party distribution provider, in which case you'll need a license key. And we can configure live event settings, you guessed it, from the Teams Admin Center and PowerShell using the commandlet set cs Teams meeting broadcast configuration. If we're using a third-party video distribution provider, we provide the name, a license key, and the API template URL for that provider. Live events policies, you can allow for scheduling, whether or not transcription is required. You can restrict who gets to join live events, who can record the live event. So in terms of who gets to join, your choices are everyone in the organization, or even specific users or groups. For your recording options, you can always record, never record, or leave that choice up to the organizer. What is Microsoft 365? What are the different ways, or different apps in use when we're producing live events? Well, the organizer can schedule the event in Stream, Yammer, or Teams. We can produce right from within Teams or with a third-party device, so an RTMP device, that's real-time messaging protocol. To go live, we have a producer role. Again, that producer can work in Stream, Yammer, or Teams. For cloud delivery, we can take advantage of Azure Media Services or a content delivery network, possibly a third-party CDN provider. And then the audience can watch using Stream, Yammer, or Teams. Let's turn our attention now to configuring and managing Teams devices. First, we need to plan for Teams rooms deployments. So we'll have a different strategy depending on the room size and what the use is for the room. Maybe we want to get a few standard installation types so we don't have to keep planning every time there's some new space we want to utilize. And we can get some consistency across various offices if we're, say, a multinational organization. And we can standardize configuration. We can create cabling diagrams and train people as needed as well. You can see three main phases on the slide here: the envision phase, the onboard phase, and the drive value phase. A few of the meeting room types: maybe it's a meet and present room. A lot of organizations are demanding flexible environments now where wheels are underneath tables and chairs, so you can easily move the room around. And for the meet and present room types, presentations, discussions are featured, and everyone can see and interact with shared content. Another space type is meet and co-create. So this could be mobile as well, the device. So we've got a Surface Hub there on wheels. We could combine those, so meet and present and meet and co-create. And again, flexibility is key. To help you decide on what hardware to buy for Microsoft Teams, well, what kind of furniture is in the room? Do you already have existing AV equipment? Are the walls bare? Are they reflective? In other words, glass? Is there a lot of sound absorbing material in the room? Carpet, ceiling tiles, soft furniture? What about lighting? Do you have issues with sunlight? Do you need additional lighting? And what is the camera going to see, or cameras that you put in the room? And how are cables going to get to the various devices? Under the floor and the ceiling, or are they trip hazards, the cables? So that all needs to be thought through. Another questions to ask: what's the goal of the room? Is there an actual whiteboard or digital whiteboard? Do you have issues with AC in terms of noise? Not to mention heating and cooling. Do you have the ability to automatically lower shades or turn on a projector? If you're planning on mounting a display on the wall, can that wall support the display weight? Some of the devices you might want to consider: Teams displays, desk phones, headphones, speakerphone pucks that are microphones as well. And various devices, you've got your sound bars. You can combine audio and video devices. Those are integrated devices all in one, like a Surface Hub. So depending on your room purpose, this will lead you towards one of the other choices. Teams Rooms devices are available across a wide variety of form factors. So modular systems, they have a center of room touch panel control, so you can manage the meeting without leaving your seat, and AV peripherals like speakers, mics, and cameras. These systems provide maximum flexibility, so you can scale up or down to meet any room size. Integrated systems bring the speakers, mics, cameras, and computer together into a single compact device, easy to deploy, simple to manage. Because of their size and simplicity, these generally work well for smaller spaces like focus rooms or small meeting spaces. Teams Rooms can also be experienced through an all-in-one device with a Surface Hub. The Surface Hub is a Windows 10 device that brings together a camera, far-field microphones, speakers, and a brilliant 4K touch screen. Surface Hub comes in two sizes, 50-inch and 85-inch. It can be mounted on the wall or paired with a steel case mobile stand and APC-charged mobile battery. While much of the core meeting experiences across these form factors are consistent, there are some key differences important to consider. The Teams Rooms experience, built for modular and integrated systems, is focused on high-quality audio and video experiences and content sharing. We call this meet and present. Often, though not a rule, these meetings are more formal in nature and happen around a table where most people are seated. The Teams Rooms experience delivered on the Surface Hub is geared toward meetings where the focus is on people needing to meet, ideate, or brainstorm as a team. We call this meet and co-create. Because these meetings tend to be less formal, there may be more movement around the space with people standing around the collaboration surface. Most organizations have a blend of spaces designed to support different kinds of meetings. Microsoft Teams Rooms offers a variety of form factors to ensure we can meet the needs of every kind of meeting and space. We're looking now at a medium conference room option. Maybe you're going to have a Surface Hub there, and then also a focus, a huddle space. single display, dual display, both supported. Here's the Surface Hub. Again, all-in-one configuration. The newest member of the Surface Hub family is Surface Hub 2S. In addition to what we've already talked about, there are tools we can use to manage Surface Hub. You may be using Microsoft Endpoint Manager or a mobile device management solution like Intune. We could use Windows Update for Business and also put apps on Surface Hub using Microsoft Store App Management. It runs the Windows 10 TeamOS, support for Teams, of course, Whiteboard, Office 365, Edge web apps, and, as mentioned, Microsoft Store apps. We need to set up resource accounts in M365 for Teams rooms. These are accounts dedicated to specific resources like a room or a projector or other piece of equipment. A couple of licensing options for Teams meeting rooms. We've got our standard and premium offering. The standard offering gives us Microsoft Teams, phone system, audio conferencing, and Microsoft Intune support. With premium, you're getting a managed service, so Microsoft can help you with your room planning and rollout, update and inventory management. They can proactively monitor and troubleshoot 24/7, 365, and customer support is available as well. We can set up remote provision and sign-in for new devices based on device's MAC address. We get a verification code which we would enter at the device. We can add MAC addresses manually or upload multiple MAC addresses in a CSV file. Here's what remote provision looks like and sign in for new devices. So we look at initial screens here. We can enter the device account, give it a friendly name and a device name, set up admins for the device screen, and also there's an admin account screen. To manage Teams rooms, we can use the Teams Admin Center or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or if we're leveraging Teams Room Managed Services, 3 different interfaces for Teams Rooms management. Again, we can delegate device management to Microsoft Managed Services. So this requires a premium license. You need to be a global admin when you first log into the portal. There might be some firewall and proxy settings to alter on your end. And it gives you round-the-clock monitoring and operations and incident management, even ServiceNow export, and delegated partner access. There's a free trial for 90 days supporting up to 100 devices. You can get that from rooms.microsoft.com/premium. You need to be signed in as a global admin to request the trial. There are various roles and permissions you can assign to individual users or security groups. 3 default roles. You can have your own roles as well. An example there on the slide, New York site leads, access and view rooms in New York. More restrictive still, New York Building 1 technicians can only see a segment of those rooms. If you're a managed service administrator, you have access to all rooms and full permissions. You can add rooms to the managed service. Again, this may require changes to firewall or proxy settings. First, you download the installer and a key, read the installation guide, and then place the installer and key on the Teams room. And you go to the new room and click Enroll to add that room to the managed service. Incidents with the managed service. You can use this to raise questions or report problems to the managed service engineers. And then you can see what Microsoft's doing to resolve your problem. And you get info about how critical the incident is as well. You can follow up on incidents with the managed service by going to Incidents and then choosing the incident you want to get details about. To manage devices in Microsoft Teams, you need to be a global admin, Teams admin, or Teams device admin, and this lets you do things like manage phones, collaboration bars, displays, panels. You can change configuration or policies. You can add tags, which are metadata. You can check out the device history, run some diagnostics, restart devices, or apply software or firmware updates. We can also check out meeting activity and view meeting details in Teams rooms, check out the utilization ratio of a given room. And we can have configuration profiles so we can have some consistency in how we configure various devices, device-specific settings, network settings, general settings, including, do we want to display a screensaver? Do we want to have the screen time out after X number of seconds or minutes? What should the backlight brightness be? Do we need high contrast displays? What are the office hours? Do we want to enable power saving? And network settings, do we want to DHCP enable the IP phone, for example? If not, then we can specify the IP address settings. There are Microsoft Teams device tags. For example, you can assign the corporate tag to both phones and Teams Rooms devices. And then if you search for the corporate tag, if you're in devices, phones, then only phones are returned. If you search for the corporate tag in devices, Team Rooms, only Teams Rooms devices are returned. To manage device tags, you need to be a global admin, Teams service admin, or Teams device admin. Troubleshooting Teams Rooms. Despite being a reliable self-managed system, issues can pop up in Teams Rooms. Here's some common scenarios and how to troubleshoot them. What if the Teams Room app is not up to date? Well, in that case, you should sign into Windows settings as an admin and manually update the app via the Microsoft Store. If that doesn't work, you can use the Microsoft Teams recovery tool. Another issue, if the resource account can't sign into Microsoft Teams, then you should sign into Windows settings as an admin and attempt to sign into Teams through the web browser. If you can't, then the account either has a wrong password or maybe there's a typo in the username. What about some common video display issues? If the video image is blurry, the colors are inaccurate, or it just doesn't look right, make sure you're using high-quality HDMI cables. And verify that those cables are tightly connected and that the cable hasn't come loose. Inspect the cable to make sure it isn't broken or damaged. You may need to update firmware on the compute module or update the video driver. Verify that the front of room displays don't have burn-in, or they're simply old and don't show a strong image anymore. If the displays don't turn on automatically, all displays should support either HDMI, Consumer Electronic Council, or PC power-on commands. Teams Rooms supports HDMI CEC, but many of the compute modules don't, meaning the HDMI ports on compute modules are not pinned correctly to send the CEC signal. In this case, you may need to add a CEC injector. What if the video is choppy or low res, or the resource account keeps signing in and out, or audio has echoes, stutters, or drops? In that case, make sure you're bypassing the proxy server and verify the appropriate firewall ports are open for Microsoft Teams. Do not use wireless networking because it's unsupported with Teams Rooms. If you're using wireless networking, switch to a physical Ethernet cable. When signed in to Windows settings as admin, go to connectivity.office.com from the web browser and validate that the results don't show any network issues with connecting to M365. Check the cabling and switch port and other networking components, making sure that the network cable isn't loose or damaged. Validate that the network switch port hasn't been misconfigured. If necessary, enable quality of service on your network for Teams Media. What are some possible general issues like poor performance? This is usually to do with unnecessary Intune or GPO settings being applied to Teams Rooms. Be sure that the Teams Rooms computer account and resource account are in dedicated OUs and block inheritance of other GPOs. Uninstall unnecessary or redundant antivirus and malware software, VPN clients, and additional security agents not required on Teams Rooms. Be sure Teams Rooms is restarting every night. And update the BIOS and firmware on the compute module to make sure that there aren't any core hardware issues. Now I'll show you how to manage meetings and virtual events experiences and deploy Teams device profiles.
Now let's explore Teams Meetings Experiences. Starting with managing live event and meetings experiences, we're going to edit the default meeting policy and restrict all recording features for meetings. That's part of our pilot project. So we'll go under Meetings, Meeting Policies. We'll edit the global org-wide default policy. We're going to turn off Allow Cloud Recording and save. Then we'll test the meeting policy for restricting recording. Signed in as Lynn Robbins to the Teams web client. We'll go into Calendar and choose Meet Now, Start Meeting, and Join Now. We'll choose the ellipsis for more actions. And notice we cannot select Start Recording. Now we'll configure meeting settings and restrict anonymous users from joining meetings. From the Teams Admin Center, we'll go into Meetings, Meeting Settings, and we're going to choose the anonymous users can join a meeting to off and hit Save. Next up, we'll create a new live event policy and restrict recording capabilities. So we'll go under Meetings and the Live Events Policies. We'll choose Add. We'll call this policy Management Live Events. We're going to have a recording restriction for live events organized by managers. We'll change the Who Can Record option to the Organizer Can Record and hit Save. Now we'll select the Management Live Events policy and choose Manage Users from the top menu. And choose Lynn Robbins. And apply. So we've successfully created a custom live event policy and assigned it to a user. Next up, we'll create a webinar. Back in the Teams web client, we'll choose Joni Sherman. Back in the web client logged in as Joni Sherman, we'll choose Calendar and then New Meeting and Webinar. Title is IT Office Hours. A couple of optional attendees. Oops, scratch that. Some required presenters we'll add. Scratch that again. We'll have optional presenters, Patty and Alan. We'll view the registration form. You can see there's fields for time and the ability to register for the event. We'll have some custom questions as well. Say, what is your question about the new reporting system? And save. And now I've successfully registered for the event with my own question. Next up is deploying Teams device profiles. So we can have different configuration profiles for different Teams devices in our organization. So we're going to choose under devices IP phones. Signed in as Patty Fernandez now, the Teams device administrator. And configuration profiles tab, we'll choose add. We'll call this profile New York Teams desk phones. And we'll have settings like the device lock is on with a 30-second timeout. And we've got a 6-digit PIN, language and time zone and date settings as well, time settings. And under device settings, we'll have those on with a 1-minute timeout. We're going to use high contrast. And office hours will be from 800 to 1700. We're going to enable power saving. Under network settings, DHCP enabled, no logging enabled, and the device's default admin password We'll enter and click Save. So we've successfully created a configuration profile that can be applied to Microsoft Teams devices. Let's create now a Microsoft Teams room. So we've ordered devices for Microsoft Teams rooms. We want to make sure the prerequisites for equipment installation are being completed. One of those prereqs is adding a device account and assigning an Office 365 license for that account. We'll need to use the Exchange Online PowerShell to complete this task, so that means we first have to install the Exchange PowerShell module. From the M365 Admin Center, we will create an M365 resource account for Teams. Going under Show All Resources and Rooms and Equipment, click on Add. Resource type of room, New York Teams Room 1 is the name, and the email will be newyorkteamsroom1@.microsoft.com. We'll click Save and edit booking options. We're going to allow repeated meetings. We're going to automatically decline meetings outside of the limits. We'll also auto accept meeting requests. Now we need to provision Microsoft Teams Room standard trial licenses. So under Billing, we'll choose Purchase Services, and the search box on the right, we'll choose Meeting Room. In the Collaboration and Communication section, under the Microsoft Teams Room Standard tile, we'll choose Details and Start Free Trial. And the checkout page, we will try now, and then Continue. Finally, we'll assign the license to the Teams Room account. So under Users, Active Users, we'll choose the New York Teams Room 1 account. And then Licenses and Apps tab. And Microsoft Teams Room Standard. And save changes. So now we've successfully created, configured, and licensed a Microsoft Teams Room service account, which is a prerequisite for deploying a Microsoft Teams Room system.
In Module 4, we examined meetings, webinars, and virtual events before looking at various devices from small headsets to Surface Hubs. We'll now take a 10-minute break. See everyone back here then when we'll get started with Module 5, Manage Calling in Microsoft Teams. Welcome back from the break. Now we'll look at phone numbers and systems and conclude with troubleshooting audio, video, and client issues. Let's get started with our fifth and final module. Let's talk about calling in Microsoft Teams, starting with managing phone numbers. So some basic terms you need to know regarding telephony, VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, public switch telephone network, PBX, that's the private branch exchange. There's a Microsoft phone system. We need to be aware of session initiation protocol and the SBC, the session border controller. So we looked at part of the slide before where we can have calls between two Teams clients using VoIP, and we can also connect to the public switch telephone network calling landlines or mobile phones from Teams. A few options here. We have Teams calling plans, the newer Operator Connect and direct routing options. Let's start with the Teams calling plans. This is all in the cloud. So if a calling plan is available, you should certainly consider the phone system with Teams calling plan. No need to retain your current PSTN carrier. Or if you simply want to use Microsoft managed access to the public switched telephone network, all good reasons for using phone system with Teams calling plans. Operator Connect is an operator-managed voice solution. Let's say you don't get calling plan in your country or region, or your preferred operator is already a participant in the Operator Connect program, or you want to find a new operator to enable calling in Teams. All these are good reasons to use Operator Connect. What are the benefits? You can leverage existing contracts or find a new operator. Your operator manages the PSTN calling services and session border controllers, so you don't have to worry about those hardware purchases or management of those devices. Faster and easier deployment, you can quickly connect to your operator and assign phone numbers to users, all from the Teams Admin Center, and enhanced support and reliability. Operators provide technical support and shared SLAs to improve support service, while direct peering, powered by Azure, creates a one-to-one network connection for enhanced reliability. Another option is phone system with direct routing. Why? Because you want to connect your on-prem environment to Teams with your existing PSTN carrier. You might want to retain that carrier. Maybe you want to mix routing with some calls going through calling plans, some through your carrier, or you need to interoperate with third-party private branch exchanges and or equipment such as overhead pagers or analog devices. These are all reasons to use phone system with direct routing. In terms of getting phone numbers, how many phone numbers do you need? Do you want to get new phone numbers or port over existing numbers? Other options there. What is the number for? Is it normally we think of user or subscriber numbers, but there's also dedicated conference bridges, either toll or toll-free to consider, and various call queue options, toll or toll-free. You may want to have auto attendants, again, toll or toll-free. More detail on those coming up. Each country or region has different instructions, different kinds of phone numbers and rules and regulations for getting phone numbers to be used in Teams. You need to use the phone number support center if you can't find the numbers from the Teams Admin Center, or you need specific area codes, or you need to port over 1,000 or more phone numbers. Otherwise, use the Teams Admin Center. And there's some screenshots of the Teams Admin Center. More on this in the demo. Here's the phone number service center. We can start a new case. For porting requests, 1,000 or more numbers, you'll need an LOA, that's a letter of authorization, to port over existing phone numbers. Emergency address, very important you get this accurate so emergency personnel can get to your office if need be. So we're talking the address, the floor, even the wing of your building, anything that would help emergency personnel locate you in case of emergency. There are geocodes that can be used as well as a physical address. You may have seen 6 decimals in the longitude and latitude of an address, getting super specific to a particular point on the Earth. For phone number management, we can assign phone numbers to users or modify, or change the phone number, assign it to someone else, remove that number. And the PowerShell commandlet to use is set CS online voice user. Yeah, easier to use the Teams admin center though. Voice settings. We can use certain tasks in the Teams admin center, others from the Teams clients. From the Teams admin center, we're looking for call delay for a specific user, Alex Wilbur. We can ring for 20 seconds before redirecting the call. We can also specify if a pickup group is involved. In other words, if we choose simultaneous ringing for the pickup group, multiple people have their phone ring at the same time. First person to answer the call gets the call. From the Teams client, we can also choose call answering rules, whether or not to forward calls, and if so, to forward to voicemail, to a different number, or to a call group. Let's talk managing the phone system for Microsoft Teams. There are special numbers for things like auto attendants and call queues. For voicemail is an option. Caller identity, we may want to have caller ID for incoming calls. We'll go into detail here. We can have call queues as well as auto attendants. So call queues. We can have an outgoing message. We can optionally have music for people waiting on hold. And we can redirect calls to agents in either distribution list or security group. And we have settings for the maximum queue size. Default is 50. Timeout settings. So what should happen at the end of the timeout? Should the caller be dropped? Should they be routed to a different voice app or voicemail? There's shared voicemail we can enable as well. Auto attendants, we could have informational greetings and custom corporate menus. So for example, press 1 for marketing, press 2 for finance, 3 for sales, and so on. We could even have a dial by name directory if we want. And we could have multiple languages if need be for the voice prompts, maybe text to speech conversion as well, speech recognition. And it's super helpful in Teams. We can set up holiday greetings and hours a year in advance so that we don't have to remember before and after each holiday to change the outgoing auto attendant voice settings. We have choices to make in terms of additional languages, if any. Do we want to allow voice inputs from users or only dialed inputs? Do we need different call routing for after hours or holiday hours? Do we want to let agents in a call queue to opt out of taking calls? Presumably, they have to go for lunch at some point. And do you want to have a specific caller ID for dial out? So let's say you're a collection agency. You want all your agents, the apparent number to be the same. That way people can't call into a specific extension directly. They must call the general number. Do you want to enable call parking? So let's say I've got a phone, I've taken the call in my car, and I arrive at the office and I want to transfer the call. I can do that with call parking. In other words, the call hands off, and I can pick up the call from my IP phone in my office. And for voice prompts, we could use a system-generated voice, or someone in your organization could supply the voice. Technical decisions, we could have individual users, we could have distribution lists for routing calls. Do we need to port over existing numbers? And there's no additional cost for auto attendants. No phone number is assigned. Here's a call routing flow. It's good to have a diagram so you can visualize the flow of incoming calls. So we've got your main menu options, your company greeting. You can assign numbers for different departments, say. You could have an after-hours greeting and a recording listing your business hours. We need Teams resource accounts for each auto attendant or call queue. There is a virtual user license we can assign. And we need service numbers for toll or toll-free service. We're looking at a screenshot of the Teams Admin Center to do those tasks. We can configure call queues as well. For call answering, we can choose a channel or group or individuals to answer the calls. Different routing methods, ways of distributing the calls evenly or in a specific order to users. It can be based on the longest idle, in other words, the person that's been waiting the longest since their last call. We can use presence-based routing. In other words, people only get calls referred to them if they're listed as available. And agents can opt out of taking calls if we allow that. What happens with call overflow? So if we've maxed out the calls in the queue, then the next caller should go to voicemail or a different app or a different person. For call timeout handling, if someone's in the queue and has been there, say, 20 minutes, then what happens then? Does that person get redirected to an app or voicemail? Auto Attendant options. We could have a person in the organization get the call, a voice app, an external phone number could be dialed. We have time zone and language settings as well to specify, and whether or not we're going to enable voice inputs or only key presses. The call flow, first play a greeting message and then route the call. Could be disconnect if it's after hours and we only take calls during office hours. We can redirect the call, play the menu options. We could enable a directory search. If we enable directory search, it could either be dial by name or dial by extension. Some advanced settings for auto attendants. Call flow for after hours or during holidays. So our options for greeting message, no greeting, play an audio file, or type in a greeting message, which gets read, and then route the call. It can be disconnected, redirected, or menu options could then play. Dial plans. You can have either service scoped, or service scoped and tenant global scoped, or service scoped and tenant user scoped. You have to decide whether you need a custom dial plan, and also valid number patterns for dial plans. You should have an organization-wide scheme as well for naming those dial plans. Here's what it looks like to configure a dial plan. So we have an example rule on the slide to translate a 4-digit extension. We specify the number pattern using .NET Framework regular expressions, and then the extension gets translated into an actual number. We can create and manage calling policies and then assign them to individuals or the organization as a whole or groups. Policy settings include making private calls, call forwarding or simultaneous ringing to people in your organization or even external phone numbers, whether or not voicemail is enabled, whether incoming calls can be routed to call groups, toll bypass, do you want busy on busy? In other words, when you're on a call, do you want to be notified that someone else is trying to call you as well? And whether you want music on hold. Call park policies. This is where you've got the call in your car and you can park the car and the call, and pick it up from your phone in the office. You can also use, if you're selling motor homes on the lot, someone can answer the phone on your behalf and page you, and you can pick up the call that way. Caller ID. Do you want incoming and or outgoing caller ID to be displayed, as discussed earlier? Lastly, let's talk troubleshooting audio, video, and client issues. There's help built into the Teams client, and initial troubleshooting steps. There's a docs.microsoft.com page for that. We want to check client connectivity for authentication. Who has the problem? Does it affect one user or one device type? So narrowing down the scope of the problem is important. Is it related to third-party integration or operability with Skype for Business? Are tools available to us? Log files. Depending on the client we're using, different log files are of use and different paths to those log files, whether we're using Windows, Linux, or Mac clients or mobile devices. Thankfully, we have the Call Analytics and Call Quality Dashboard. Call Analytics lets us narrow down on specific calls. Call Quality Dashboard, overall call quality across the organization. There's also a direct routing health dashboard. So different log files available. Often if you're on the phone with Microsoft, they might ask you to forward them a log file, especially the debug log files for later analysis. So to look at Call Analytics, we need to be a Teams admin or one of the two Teams communication support roles. and we go down into a user from Teams admin and then look at specific meetings and calls for that user. There's an overview, there's an advanced tab, there's debug, so we can drill down. The table on the slide shows that the support engineer is able to see more detail and access more tools than the communication support specialist. We can analyze call analytics for meetings, looking at a timeline and various participant details. Again, narrowing down the scope of the problem is key. And for aggregate performance information, we can use the call quality dashboard. You must be have one of the roles listed on the screen there, starting with global administrator, all the way down to reports reader, and we can get data pertaining to the last day, week, or month, and generate summary reports so between server to client communication, client to client, voice quality, overall call quality. Rate my call report. So after a call, users can rate from 1 to 5 stars. And we can drill down into the reports. If you get an increase in very short call duration, say 5 seconds or so, that could be an indication of problems. Because if you think of our normal cell phones, if we get a bad connection, quite common, say, oh, one person says, I'll call you right back, we got a bad connection. So short calls, 5 seconds or so, could indicate problems with your Teams connections there, or call quality. There's a direct routing health dashboard as well. So information on things like average call duration I just mentioned, the network effectiveness ratio. That is a call completed? Now, even if let's say you call me and I send the call to voicemail, that's still a successful call. So that call was completed. It reached its destination even though I didn't answer the phone. It sent it to voicemail. So that factors into the network effectiveness ratio. Now I'll show you how to set up a calling plan and manage a phone system for Microsoft Teams.
In the first part of this demo, we're going to set up a calling plan. To do that, though, first we need to add a new emergency address. From the Teams Admin Center, we'll go into Locations, Emergency Addresses, choose Add. I'm going to call this Contoso Emergency Address in the United States. We'll input the address manually. One Microsoft way. Select the checkbox to acknowledge how emergency calling works, and click Save. Next, we'll activate a trial calling plan. From the M365 Admin Center, under Billing, Purchase Services, we'll select Add-ons. We want the M365 Domestic Calling Plan for US and Canada trial. Choose Details, and Start Free Trial. Try now, and continue. So now we have 25 calling plan licenses to assign to test out domestic calling plan capabilities. So we'll assign a calling plan license to a user. Under Users, Active Users, and Lynn Robbins, choose Licenses and Apps, and we'll choose the M365 Domestic Calling Plan Policy, and save changes. Now, Lynn can use calling plan features and receive a phone number. So in Task 4, we'll order a phone number for the user from the Teams Admin Center. Under Voice, we'll choose Phone Numbers and Add. The name of the order will be Phone Number Order. And the description will be number for Lynn Robbins during the calling plan trial. In the United States, and this is a user number. We want one of them. The operator will be Microsoft. And eventually we'll find a number that works. Click Place Order. And finish. So we just ordered a phone number for a user in Microsoft Teams. You can use the same process to order numbers for other Microsoft Teams services like call queues. Now we'll assign a phone number to a user. Voice phone numbers, and we'll click Edit and assign to Lynn Robbins. Under emergency location, choose location description and the emergency location created earlier. And apply. Now we'll manage the phone system for Microsoft Teams. Contoso is using a legacy PBX system, and will migrate their legacy telephony system to Microsoft phone system. Teams admins are responsible for evaluating and testing Microsoft Teams voice functionality. So we'll create a calling policy. We'll go under Voice and Calling Policies. We're going to edit the Global org-wide default policy. We're going to select that voicemail is available for routing inbound calls and not enabled, and save. Then we're going to add to create a new policy. This is voicemail enabled pilot users. A calling policy that allows voicemail for selected pilot users. We'll select enabled for voicemail is available for routing inbound calls and save. We'll select that policy. And manage users. We'll assign this to Megan. Alex. Joni. And Lynn. And then apply. So now we've disabled voicemail for all users in the organization, except for those we created a custom calling policy for to enable voicemail for the trial. Now we'll create a call queue in task 2. So we are going to set up a greeting message, music on hold, and the ability to redirect calls to call agents in mail-enabled distribution lists and security groups. So under org-wide settings, we'll choose resource accounts and add. This will be the Contoso call queue resource account with the username of pilot_call queue1. And the resource account type is call queue. Hit save. Now I'm going to download a WAV file called alarm03.wave. Save it to the C drive. Then we'll go under voice and call queues and add. We'll call this the Contoso call queue. And add a resource account. Contoso call queue. Under greeting, we'll play an audio file and choose upload file. Music on hold will be the default music. For call answering, we will choose users and groups, and we're going to add sales. And add, the routing method will be round robin. We'll set presence-based routing to off and allow call agents to opt out of taking calls. The alert time will be 30 seconds and maximum calls in queue will be 50. When the maximum number of calls is reached, we'll disconnect. Call timeout handling is 5 minutes. And when the call time's out, disconnect. And save. Now, in the real world, you'd record and prepare a greeting audio file and upload that audio file. Next, we'll create an Auto Attendant. It will use the transcribed welcome message to respond to customers outside of office hours, while informing callers of the business hours. Under org-wide settings, we'll choose resource accounts and add. This will be called the Contoso Auto Attendant. Username pilot _ auto attendant 1 and the resource account type auto attendant and save. Then we'll go to under voice, choose auto attendants and add. This will be the Contoso Auto Attendant. The operator will be a voice app. And search by resource account will be the Contoso call queue resource account. Time zone will be Pacific time, UTC -8. English, United States, and we'll turn off voice inputs and choose next. On the call flow page, we'll add a greeting message of welcome. The person you called is currently on vacation. Your call will be redirected to an operator. Then route the call, we'll choose redirect call, redirect to voice app. And the resource account is the Contoso call queue resource account. We'll hit next. We're going to clear all hours and then configure working hours Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we'll choose first play a greeting message, add a greeting message. Thank you for your call. Our business hours are Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then route the call will be disconnect. And next. And we could optionally set up holiday call settings in advance, but we won't. The Find People page, we'll hit next. resource accounts, we'll click Add. This will be the Contoso Auto Attendant. And we'll click Add twice. And submit. So now we've successfully created a resource account for the Auto Attendant and created an Auto Attendant configuration.
This concludes our Microsoft 365 Virtual Training Day. Enable hybrid work with Microsoft Teams. Let's recap all the content you've seen. In Module 1, we explored Microsoft Teams Admin Center and PowerShell as part of planning and deploying Microsoft Teams, and examined Teams lifecycle management and governance. In Module 2, we discussed different levels of external access, as well as security and compliance settings for Microsoft Teams. We also looked at crucial network settings you need to know before deploying Teams. In Module 3, we saw several ways to create and manage Teams, as well as allowing for different kinds of chat and channel collaboration. Finally, we looked at how you can extend Teams capabilities using apps. In Module 4, we examined meetings, webinars, and virtual events, before looking at various devices from small headsets to Service Hubs. Lastly, in Module 5, we examined phone numbers and systems and troubleshooting audio, video, and client issues. Thank you for attending, and we hope you enjoyed these sessions. Remember, there are many ways to continue your learning journey, such as MS Learn, where we offer self-paced learning options, and be sure to check the calendar for more Microsoft Virtual Training Day events. you.